Hello and welcome to Sports Mole's Football Shorts. I'm Barney Corkhill. I'm here with our football editor Matt Law. I'm here to discuss game week 10 of the Premier League season. Game week 9 was actually a really good one for our predictions. I got 3 spot-on results. Matt got 2. But at the end of it all, I'm now 4 points ahead, Matt. Quite the turnaround. I was 10 points behind not long ago.
Yeah, the West Ham game helped you, didn't it? A lot. Obviously, getting that, getting to myself right was good. But yeah, you've taken the lead. But hopefully, normal service does resume this week.
Well, let's get straight into it because the first game is tonight. Crystal Palace versus Newcastle. An interesting game between two pretty inconsistent teams. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think inconsistent's probably been the buzzword, isn't it, recently, of how things has been, the story of the season for a lot of teams. And Palace, Newcastle, this is the kind of game, if there were fans, under the lights at Selhurst Park, Friday night game, be really, really interesting. Obviously, there's a few side stories. Obviously, Zaha's not available for Palace still because of coronavirus, which is, a big blow for them. He's done really well this season, scored a few goals. But on the other side, Callum Wilson's back for Newcastle. He's got 6 goals in 8 games this season, and that's an awful lot for Newcastle, isn't it? When you are looking at earlier and you're looking at, Joe Linton, Andy Carroll, no goals between them. St Maximum's only got 1. And if you're missing, it's the same story with Palace, really. Batshuayi and Benteke, not a Premier League goal between them this season, whereas Zaha's got 5, has he so far? Yeah, 5 in 8 games, which is a pretty good return. Obviously, Newcastle, there's going to be some absentees through, coronavirus as well. Steve Bruce has said there's been some tests. One player that would have played won't now be playing. Hasn't named who that player is, but because of coronavirus. So both players, teams missing, but it's just a draw again for me. We spoke about earlier. There's going to be a few draws, I think, in this week, and I've just gone 1-1. I don't think either side will be too disappointed to lose. I don't know if anyone can really win it. Obviously, Palace at home have had some good wins, but Newcastle with Wilson back, I think we'll get a point. So I've gone 1-1.
Yeah, I think for the first of quite a few times today, I think we've gone the same. I've gone 1-0 because, as you say, I think to be honest, if I was to back a team to win this, it probably would be Newcastle because of Wilson being back and they've got the goals which they've lacked in the last couple of games, which has really cost them. Crystal Palace, their record without Wilfred Zaha is awful. I think last season I thought he was really under par, and when people were talking about 60, 70, maybe 80 mil for him, I think everyone would have laughed at that because last season he was nothing particularly special, but he started this season so well, and you just have to look at that record of the Palace without him to see how important he is to the team. So he probably is worth that much to them, but as you say, without him for this one, I can't see them picking up a win, and it's hard to pick back Newcastle at the moment, the form they're in. So yeah, I've gone exactly the same, 1-1 in that one. Early Saturday kickoff is Brighton versus Liverpool. Liverpool, we were speaking earlier how impressive they were against Leicester last week. We both backed a draw in that one. I think we both sneakily thought Leicester might go on and win it, but for Liverpool to win 3-0 with their injury absentees, it was a dominant display. 3-0 flattered Leicester more than did Liverpool as well. It was a really good performance, and sort of underlined their title credentials again, even with the injuries they've got. Having said that, in midweek against Atalanta, they were really poor, failed to get a shot on target, lost 2-0 at home. I think it's the first time under Klopp they've lost a competitive game by more than 2 goals at home, and first time in 90 minutes since September 2017. So that really was a shock result, and even more so a shock performance, because they just didn't really offer anything, even with Mo Salah being back in the team. There was a lot of changes to that team. They'll be closer to full strength this time, but they've still got 8 players probably missing. Henderson's now back in training, so maybe he'll be back. So when I say closer to full strength, they're still missing a lot of key men. Brighton, on the other hand, stats-wise, they're leading near the top of quite a lot this season in the Premier League, aren't they? But still find themselves 16th. That win against Villa last week should be huge for them, should finally get some points on the board, which they deserved. And this will be a tricky game for Liverpool. Having said that, I think the performance over Leicester, and I think they now go into these Premier League games thinking they're more important than the Champions League ones, because one more win from their 3 Champions League games before the Atalanta game would see them through to the next round. So I think these Premier League ones are the ones they'll be focusing on most. So again, I can see them winning this one. I think it'll be tight, but I'm going for a 2-1 Liverpool win here.
Oh dear me, yeah, exactly the same on that one. We're going to say that a few times. I thought you'd go more on that, to be honest. I think the point about the Champions League, it's not the end of the world, is it, if Liverpool lose in the Champions League? Because if Liverpool were to win the Champions League this season, no one's going to say, oh, but they lost in the group stages. It's much better to lose. If you're going to lose in a competition where you're going to probably qualify anyway than to lose in the Premier League. But yeah, Brighton, it's probably the story. 2 teams that I think Brighton have got as many as 9, potential absentees for this game. Obviously, Lamptey being one who's been fantastic, isn't he? Really excellent fullback. Obviously left Chelsea and sent off last week against Villa, so he's absent. Obviously, like you say, Liverpool's still missing a number of key players. So, if both sides are at full strength, Brighton, the game that stands out, the Manchester United game early this season, where they were excellent. Loads of chances, loads of the ball. Really brave. They are a brave side, won't they? There are a lot of players that will take the ball. They will take the ball under pressure and they'll try and do the right things. But whether that will translate into points for this game is difficult. Yeah, I just fancy Liverpool. Like I said, the Leicester one was a surprise, I think, their performance, considering who was absent. But I think you still looked at the starting team. There was so much talk of injuries, but it was still a strong side, wasn't it, that got sent onto the field. It wasn't like it was massively young, patched up and stuff like that. It's still probably, and it shows that Liverpool probably got a stronger squad than many people think. Just think there's a fair starting 11 and then not so good on the bench. But big win, and I think Liverpool win again, to be honest. Same as you, 2-1.
2-1 for both of us in that one. Man City are in action against Burnley at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Man City, they need some Premier League points on the board, don't they? 8 games in, they've got 12 points. They're 13th in the table. They've dropped 12 points in the Centurion season. They dropped 14 points throughout the whole season. But they've already dropped 12 points this season after 8 games. Burnley finally got that much-needed first win on the board against Crystal Palace last time out. So it's an interesting game. Obviously, Man City's record at home to Burnley is sensational. I think they've won the last 3 5-0. I think I predicted one of them in last season's prediction competition. Actually, I'll just get that one in. But this season, they're looking a lot more fallible, and Burnley might just fancy their chances despite their terrible record at the Etihad. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's one of those games in it that stands out. I think that's why you picked it. You just think it's going to be a heavy home win in days gone by and seasons gone by. And you still think that, it takes a brave man to back City not to win this game. I don't think you will, to be honest. I've got a horrible feeling we're going to go the same again, but maybe a little bit different. But I just think City are now getting out the other side of injuries. I think obviously Nathan Ake's out of this game, but apart from that, pretty full strength at the moment, City. And when they are full strength, when they've got all their players fit and firing, they are still a formidable team. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, losing at Tottenham was really disappointing for Guardiola, and obviously signed a new deal now. And like I say, to be sitting 13th in the table at this stage, with 8 points off the top of the league at this point. There's obviously got a game in hand over the top, but they won't want to be falling any further behind. Obviously, Tottenham play Chelsea, don't they? So one of those, one or both, are going to drop points in that game. Fancy Liverpool to win again, so they can't afford not to win this game, even so early in the season. Burnley, I think you're doing your best Sean Dyche impression, aren't you, at the moment with your moustache, trying to get the full thing. But no, I don't think that will get into anything in this game. The win over last time out again, Palace was a big one, but I feel still they're going to struggle this season. We spoke about it a few times. One of those sides down there, Sheffield United, West Brom, those sort of sides that I think are going to be, unfortunately down the wrong end of the table. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what you've got in this one. I do fancy City. I think there'll be some goals in this one. I've gone 3-0.
3-0, yeah. Don't get me doing my Sean Dyche voice as well, because it'll be uncanny then. I've gone different. I've gone 2-0. I think Man City, they're struggling for goals a little bit at the moment, which you've never really been able to say against Man City. I think all the underlying stats, not just the fact that they've only scored 10 goals in 8 games, they haven't scored more than 1 goal in a game in quite a while, and their average number of shots on targets and everything like that is the lowest it's been under Guardiola. So I think there's a few worrying signs there. Obviously, with now Aguero being back, Jesus is back as backup to Aguero if he needs to be. As you say, they've got pretty much fully fit squad now. You'd expect those numbers to start rising, but I don't think it's going to be another 5-0 like we've seen in recent years. So yeah, I've gone for 2-0 in this one, but both going for comfortable. Man City wins to 0 in that one. 5:30 p.m. sees Everton take on Leeds. This is another interesting clash. Everton had those couple of defeats, but then bounced back with that 3-2 win over Fulham last time out. A much-needed win for them after such a bright start to the season, then such a slump. But then obviously only scraping past the Fulham side who have struggled this season. Leeds started the season well, as we've said a few times, got a lot of plaudits, but recently I've been struggling to pick up wins. Having said that, a decent 0-0 draw with Arsenal last time out. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. There's a lot of games like this season, isn't there? Wolves, Everton, Wolves, Southampton, games like that, isn't it? You know what I mean? That you look at them and think, got the potential to be a good game. Leeds were so unlucky, weren't they, not to beat Arsenal last time. They did everything they could to win the game, loads of chances, much better, move the ball. Arguably weren't as good when Arsenal went down to 10 men. They were probably better, psychological thing of, you start maybe forcing it a little bit when you got a man advantage to try and get the points. But still, a point at Arsenal was a good result after back-to-back 4-1 defeats. And Everton, I think the Everton-Fulham game was, you saw the best and the worst of Everton, really good going forward. But I still think defensively, I think Lucas Digne's picked up a problem, wasn't he, in training, so he's facing some time out. That's a big blow for them. I think he's one of the best attacking fullbacks in the league without a doubt. And if he's absent, it's a problem for Everton because they're not blessed with really quality backup in the defensive positions. But obviously Calvert-Lewin, on fire again at the moment, was really good against Fulham last time out. And it's an interesting one. This is the one I changed my mind on this one. And I think you should always go with your gut instinct. And I fancy the draw on this one, but I've just gone Everton in the end. I think at home, obviously winning last time out, they'll be full of confidence. And Everton, all things considered, have shown a lot of good things this season. And Leeds, I still think they're a little bit, there's that word again, inconsistent. And it's a tight one. It wouldn't surprise me either if it was any of the three results. But just Everton 2-1.
Yeah, it's difficult to know what to expect, isn't it? I went back and forth on this one quite a lot as well. In the end, I've gone for 1-1 draw. I've gone for a lot of draws. I think we both have probably this week. This was just one I couldn't separate them. If I was to pick a team to win again, it probably would be Everton. Their record this season is obviously much better. You mentioned Leeds being inconsistent. Just looking at it now, 3 wins, 2 draws, 4 defeats, 14 goals scored and 17 conceded from 9 games. There's not so much you can predict from that. Or what to expect from them, but they do often raise their games against the teams that might not be expected to beat, which at Goodison Park, maybe a few people won't be expecting them to win this one. So it is an intriguing clash. I certainly can't see Leeds keeping a clean sheet against Calvert-Lewin in this form. I really fancy him to get on the score sheet in this one. But I've gone for 1-1 in this one. I'm starting to regret that now. I think you might win that one with the Everton victory, but I'll stick with my guns and go 1-1 in that one. 8 p.m. is a huge game at the bottom. West Brom versus Sheffield United, the two remaining winless teams in the league, both really desperate for a victory. Sheffield United still only 1 point to their name after 9 games. I think it's one of the worst Premier League starts of all time. West Brom not doing too much better with 3 points to their name. Sheffield United lost their last 4. West Brom lost their last 3. Neither side really offering much in front of goal either. Their goals have really dried up. I think it's 6 goals for West Brom and 4 for Sheffield United throughout the course of the season. It seems too obvious to go for a 0-0 draw in this one, but it's just screaming it out to me, and I can't really ignore it because neither team is scoring goals at the moment. Both teams in poor form, and while both teams will be looking at this as a really good chance to get a victory, and they might go a bit more gung-ho because they know how important a victory is in this game. It's already looking like a relegation 6-pointer considering how there's that bottom 4 and then already there's a bit of a gap to Brighton. But screaming out a 0-0, and I've gone for the obvious choice. I think goalless draw.
Yeah, unfortunately, it won't be surprising to say that I've gone the same on this one. It's just one of those games, you look at the goals this season, West Brom 6 goals, Sheffield United 4 goals. The only 2 sides not to win in the league this season. I think the one thing I would say is West Brom against Manchester United last weekend, I thought they were good, to be fair. I thought they, obviously the penalty incident was interesting to get your view on that before we move on to the next game. The West Brom one, I think it was not a great deal in it. I mean, did you think that was a penalty, the Conor Gallagher one?
Well, as you say, it's not a great deal in it. And I think nowadays there's so many of those choices which could go either way. And, whichever way they go, they're going to annoy a lot of people. I think I probably would have said, I think there was a couple of penalty shouts in that one. I think a couple of them were pretty debatable, to be honest. But I don't know. I saw why that one was given, but it also could have been given as well.
Yeah, I think the thing was, obviously, he took the ball, but there was a little bit of a kick on the shin as well, wasn't there? So it was one of those, like you say, either way. But I think their performance anyway was good. I think, obviously, they, no points to show, but to only lose 1-0 at Old Trafford, United playing some okay stuff at the moment, and take confidence from that game. I think they have got some talented players, Gallagher being one. I think he's really good. I think he's going to be a really good player in the game going forward. But Sheffield United, it's really difficult, isn't it, to see at the moment. I think obviously last season they overachieved so, I think they finished 9th, didn't they? But the fact that they were pushing for the top 4, before the lockdown period it was a miracle that they were up there. And now you look at their squad, and you always looked at their squad, didn't you, and think it's not a fabulously strong squad across the board. There's not loads of goals. And I think that's the problem. They don't have a player that's going to get, they haven't got Callum Wilson, who you fancy is going to get, 15 Premier League goals this season maybe, which will obviously pull them out of trouble. But yeah, it's a 0-0, isn't it, in that game? Obviously, it'd be this is the one we will look at and see, very interesting to see if there are some goals. There's just not a great deal in it. There's not a great deal of goals in either side. So yeah, goalless.
Yeah, I think the thing with this one is they're neither exactly flourishing in attack, but recently they've both been a bit tighter defensively as well, which makes it hard to back, a team scoring because the defence is so bad. Obviously, Sheffield United had that one against Chelsea, but recently they haven't been shipping too many goals, either of them. So yeah, both going for 0-0 in that one. On Sunday, we've got Southampton versus Manchester United. This is a difficult game for Man United. Southampton in really good form, still without Ings, a 1-0 draw against Wolves last time out. Man United have returned to form after that little slump against Istanbul, and Arsenal beating Everton, beating West Brom, and then beating Istanbul, getting revenge on them in the Champions League with another good performance from Bruno Fernandes in that match. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think, United won their last 7 Premier League games, which is incredible, really. It's an incredible form. But Southampton, a lot of spoke about their away form, hasn't we? But they've won the last 3 at home, without conceding. So it's a really tough game for United. It's one of those games, I've obviously backed United, a few times, a few times more than I should have done this season. But I've gone a draw here in the end. I think there'll be a few goals, United in the Champions League, as well as they played going forward. Istanbul had a lot of chances in that game. They, obviously scored a really good goal, and De Gea had to make a couple of good saves. And I still, obviously, Lindelof is a little bit of a doubt. Obviously, he's got a bit of a back problem for this game, so there might have to be a change there. I think whether Van der Beek starts is going to be very interesting. I thought he was really, really good in the middle of the park against Istanbul, but it's going to be a different test in the Premier League, and that's probably why Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been a little bit more, cautious in playing him, certainly starting him in this game. And for me, the fascinating decision will come in attack. Will it be Cavani through the middle? For me, it should be, because he offers not just goals, his movement. He opens up things for people around him. Fernandes has more space. Rashford can play a little bit wider. And yeah, he just makes it a lot more free flowing up there. He takes the ball well back to goal. He's just a really, really good striker, and I think he should play in this game. Obviously, Martial possibly off the left, Rashford off the right. But Greenwood's back now, so suddenly United have got options going forward, and I do think they're full of goals. To be honest, I think obviously Fernandes, he's taken a lot of criticism, hasn't he? But his numbers are fabulous. Such an effective player in the final third. But yeah, Southampton without Ings almost went United. Was really close to going United in this game, and obviously I do hope they win. But for the purposes of this, I've gone a draw. I've gone 2-2.
Yeah, I've gone a draw. I've gone 1-1. I think just it's hard to back against Southampton at the moment because they're in good form and they're picking up these results. And as you say, their home form last season was terrible, but this season has been quite good. Obviously, they lost to Tottenham quite heavily, so that was bad. But since then, 3 clean sheets in a row, 3 2-0 wins in a row against West Brom, Everton and Newcastle. You'd expect Man United to perhaps put up a bigger test than those 3 teams did. But United, you've mentioned it as already this season, it's difficult to trust them. It seems that every time they start going on a good run, we start backing them, and then they go on a bit of a slump. So we start backing against them, and then they go on a good run again. It seems to be, again, that buzzword is inconsistency from them, but they're doing it over slightly longer periods rather than during 1 week, winning the next and losing the next. They win a few, then lose a couple, and it's not enough to build a consistent one, certainly to build a title challenge, maybe even carry on that form the course of the season, probably not even the top 4 challenge. They sit in 10th place with 13 points as things stand. So it's a very difficult one to call because, well, you mentioned their away form is spectacular at the moment, and it's a real quirk of their form that they're so good away from home but have been struggling so much at home. That win over West Brom last weekend was their first home win of the season in the Premier League, and even that was only a narrow one against one of the teams really struggling at the bottom. So away from home, they've been so good, so it's difficult to back against United away from home. But Southampton in general and at home recently have also been too good to back against, really. So yeah, that's why I've gone for draw in the end. I've gone 1-1, back those 2-2. So both going for draws in that one, different score lines though at least. The headline fixture of the weekend is a London derby between Chelsea and Tottenham, 2 really informed teams going into weekend. It's 3rd place Chelsea versus top of the table Tottenham. Tottenham beat Man City last weekend with that really good victory, whereas Chelsea beat Newcastle. Both were victorious in Europe in midweek. Tottenham obviously courtesy of that Harry Winks pass/shot, which went in from 54 yards, which is an incredible goal, but certainly not meant, I don't think. But this is a fascinating contest, isn't it, between arguably the 2 informed teams in the country right now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk, isn't there, about whether these 2 could launch a title challenge. Obviously, Liverpool will, be up there. Obviously, City will expect to as well. But yeah, it's a really interesting game. Is it obviously early in the season? What we end of November. I say early in the season. We're flying through almost at Christmas.
Quarter of the way through now, yeah.
Yeah, no, you keep saying that. I don't know. I'm a little bit guilty of that, saying it's still quite early, but the games are racking up, and certainly over the Christmas period, you'll find yourself 15, 16 games into the season, and obviously the league table will be taking shape. But yeah, I think obviously Tottenham won their last 5. I think in all competitions, Chelsea their last 6. So 2 teams in fabulous form. The Ludogorets game for Tottenham was a nice game, with respect to, the opposition. They never really tested. It was comfortable. Obviously, Chelsea had to dig a little bit deeper to win in the Champions League. Obviously, Giroud came off and scored a really big goal for them. Obviously, talk around his future at the moment. And both teams, you always feel like Tottenham's challenge this season, what they do will depend on whether they can keep, Kane and Son fit. As we saw, if they lose those 2 players, then they're probably less than half the team. I think because Son and Kane are so good, I think they're both top draw. If they can keep those fit, then they could really make a change this season. Chelsea have started to bumble along quite nicely, haven't they? They've got a lot of options going forward now. Ziyech has been really good. Werner's obviously been chipping in, and they're suddenly. I wasn't sure earlier in the season. I'm a little bit more sure now. I think they're taking shape. I think they're going to be a good side, and certainly real strong challenges for the in and around the top 3. It's this difficult. I don't think they'll win the league this season, but in and around there. So it's a draw for me. And I almost went Chelsea just because Tottenham. I'm still not 100% convinced. I do not trust them defensively in this game, and I think Chelsea are better, man for man in a lot of positions in this game. But Mourinho is. He's doing good things again at the club, and draw here, tight game, 1-1.
Yeah, I think the thing with Tottenham and losing Kane and Son, obviously that would be a big blow. But I think this season they've got a lot more depth than they have in previous seasons. With Vinicius obviously scoring twice in midweek. You've got Gareth Bale, who hasn't even started quite a lot of games since he's been there. So they've got a lot of depth to cover for them. Obviously those 2 are the star duo at the moment. Obviously Mourinho going back to Stamford Bridge for this one is a big thing. And although Lampard's got a pretty good record against him, going head to head in the managerial stakes so far, I can see Tottenham nicking this one. I think this has got the hallmarks of a classic Mourinho tactical. I don't quite want to say masterclass, but I think he could get the tactics right for Tottenham in this one. Spring on the break with Kane in such good form, assisting as well as scoring goals. Son's pace on the break. Chelsea have looked a lot stronger defensively in recent weeks. Obviously, early in the season, that was the big question mark over whether they'd be able to launch a title challenge, was their defence. They're looking a lot better on that front. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a Chelsea win or a draw in this one. But I've just got a sneaky feeling for Tottenham in this one. I didn't want to go for another draw, that's for sure. I've just got a sneaky feeling for Tottenham. I think they could win this one 2-1 with Kane in such good form. Mourinho going back to Stamford Bridge, flying high, obviously at the top of the table. They've got the best defensive record in the league. Only Chelsea themselves have scored more goals. I've just gone for a 2-1 Tottenham winning this one, but it should be a really, really fascinating game, that one. Rounding off the action on Sunday's Arsenal versus Wolves. You mentioned these type of fixtures earlier. There's quite a lot of them this season, and they're games you could really see being a good match. Arsenal down in 12th place at the moment. Wolves up in 9th. Arsenal drew with Leeds last weekend. Wolves drew at home to Southampton, lost against Leicester in their last away game. So it's, again, a difficult one to call this one. There's a lot of games like this which look like draws. And again, I've gone for a draw in this one because, again, I can't separate them. You look at the league table, Arsenal, what's there, 1 point separating the 2 sides. Arsenal already lost 4 times this season from 9 games, only won 4 of as many games. So they're really struggling to pick up results. And certainly more recently than not, I think their European form, picking up wins regularly, has sort of clouded their Premier League form, which is now only 1 win in the last 5 games and 4 points from the last 15 available. So they really need to start picking up victories, especially with the North London derby coming up in their next Premier League game. Whereas Wolves, they're struggling to really find that sort of consistency, but draw against Southampton last time out. And as I mentioned, defeat to Leicester before that. They've only got 1 win in the last 4 Premier League games. So difficult one to call. And I can see those runs extending here. I've gone for a 1-1 draw. Yeah,
exactly the same. I'm not too surprised. I did my best to try and pick a winner in this one, just because, I didn't really want to go another draw. But I think Wolves, interested 3 of the next 4: Liverpool, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea. So it's a tough run, and you could easily find yourself sliding down the league. And I think Arsenal, obviously, I've mentioned it. Was it last week or the week before about Arteta? Just there's no real question marks, but I just don't think they're playing well this season, Arsenal. They were probably, want of a better word, a little bit battered at Leeds, to be honest. I thought they were really fortunate to get a point. Obviously, not Aubameyang's been off colour this season. As you know, they run at Old Trafford, but that was quite fortunate. I'm just not sure about Arsenal this season. Like I say, 4-1-4 this season in terms of their record. 4 wins, 1 draw, 4 defeats is not great, is it? Let's be honest. Wolves could cause them real problems, I think, on the break, team selection for that game. And you match up the teams 1 to 11. I'd pick a lot of Wolves players over Arsenal players, to be honest. I think they're better in midfield. Connor Cody would get in the Arsenal side for me. Jimenez would have been in the final third. So it's an interesting one. There's not a great deal between teams in terms of quality, and you've seen what certain teams have done to Arsenal this season. Villa playing a certain way, playing expressive, playing almost, the 3 forward, which Wolves will in this game, 3 players almost that will be allowed to stay forward and the rest will defend. And I think they'll cause Arsenal real problems. It almost went Wolves, but then you do have to give Arsenal a little bit of respect. They are, pretty good at the Emirates Stadium in the Premier League. Obviously, the Villa one wasn't great when they got beat, but their record, last season was pretty good. So, draw here, 1-1.
Both going for 1-1 draws on that. Okay, the first of the Monday night doubleheader sees Leicester take on Fulham. We mentioned Liverpool's win over Leicester. Leicester would be really disappointed with their performance. You fancied that was a real chance to get at Liverpool. And with players like Jamie Vardy in their squad, I personally thought there wasn't many teams better equipped to really get at Liverpool early and unsettle their pretty much patched up backline, but that it just never really occurred. Liverpool dealt with Vardy really well, but Leicester, from their point of view, never really got anything going in attack. They were far too passive in the first half, in particular in that game. And in the end, were a bit fortunate to only lose by 3 goals. They conceded 3 again in midweek, but still managed to snatch a very late draw, thrilling end to that game against Sporting Braga in the Europa League. But before that Liverpool game, they were in really good form. They went into that weekend, last game week, top of the table. So they certainly demand respect. 6 wins from their 9 games. No one's won more games in the Premier League so far this season. So they certainly demand that respect. And they've picked up a few really good wins in that time as well. Conversely, Fulham in the relegation zone now. They do have a win on the board against West Brom, but things are looking quite bleak for them. I mentioned earlier there's 4 at the bottom and already starting to be cut adrift a bit. And it's hard to see Fulham breaking out of that 4, certainly this season. They've lost 7 games this season, so only Sheffield United have lost more than that. So it's the team with the joint most wins against the team with the second most defeats. So it looks like it'll only go one way. I've personally gone for a pretty comfortable Leicester win in this one, 3-0.
3-0, yeah, I've gone 2-0 Leicester. I think obviously there will be too strong ultimately. And, I think Leicester, the defeat of Liverpool was disappointing, but, a lot of teams have had those blips this season and shouldn't read too much into it. I still think they're a good side, and obviously they're getting players back. Ricardo, Soyuncu, and Ndidi, not a million miles away from coming back into the side, and they'll make them a whole lot better. Obviously, they're through in the Europa League, the competition. They'll be keen to do well in this season, and yes, it's probably a nice game. I think Fulham. I think Scott Parker will be pulling his hair out of that penalty miss again against Everton. They're big moments, aren't they, in the game? The one against West Ham, it's the difference between getting a point and losing, and then against Everton at key moment of the game to miss a penalty. It's a difference between, obviously a lot happens after that, but the difference between potentially getting a point or maybe better, and that looks a lot better, especially after beating West Brom. Suddenly you might pull off a little bit of a 3-game unbeaten run, go into this game full of confidence. Fulham's next 2, City away, Liverpool at home. So not great in terms of, wanting to get points on the board, and in this game, which makes it's a horrible run, and you don't want to be going into the festive period, really struggling down there. But Fulham, obviously, we both expect them to have tough seasons, and I think they really will struggle. I do think they'll go down this season. Yeah, it's a tough game. Leicester, obviously, not fresh in terms of playing in the Europa League. Fulham have had a little bit of a time off to prepare for this game, but yeah, it's tough to back them. 2-0 Leicester.
2-0 to Leicester for Matt. And final match of the game week is West Ham versus Aston Villa. And this is, like with a few of them, one I really went back and forth on. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's a draw again, to be honest. I did my best again to pick a winner. And I've actually gone, looking at it now, I'm not too sure, but I'm going to stick with it. I've gone 2-2 in the end. I just think both sides, obviously Villa, I think they're full of goals this season, full of quality going forward. West Ham, they're having a good season as well. Obviously, they play United next weekend after, so it's a big game to come, and they'll obviously be keen to pick up all 3 points in this game. But it's it's an interesting one. I did do my best to back them. Obviously, West Ham back-to-back 1-0 wins, really, really impressive. I think you mentioned the point, didn't you, last week about Sheffield United, that if they were to win that game, probably say a lot about them, because they have to almost grind it out in a tough place to go and win, which they did manage to do. And think West Ham this season are a good side, and obviously getting Antonio back in whenever that might be will obviously make them a lot better. Good side of Villa as well. Obviously inconsistent as that again, but they are that. Obviously got some good players. Watkins, a really good season. Barkley, obviously Grealish. Everyone knows his talent. So interesting game. Again, it's one of those. I did do my best to back a winner, but just looking at it, I'm just not sure. I've just got to go a draw in the end. I think it'd be an okay result for both, to be honest.
Yeah, to be honest, I was leaning towards a draw, but I've already picked 5 of them, and there can't be that many draws in no game week. So I've picked a winner, and I did go back and forth. At one point, I had West Ham down to win, but I think I've just gone for Aston Villa 2-1. I think that their away form is spectacular, Aston Villa, and while they've been inconsistent on the whole, 3 defeats in the last 4, and all pretty disappointing defeats, they've all come at home. Away from home, they've been superb so far this season. West Ham, for their credit, have not been too bad at home themselves, with beating Wolves 4-0 and drawing with Man City. So they're certainly capable of winning this game, or at least getting something out of it. But as you say, it's such a difficult one to call. I've just gone for an Aston Villa 2-1 victory. I wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way, but you look at the table, 7th versus 8th, this is 1 point separating them in the table. So, whereas Aston Villa have made such a good start to the season, West Ham have probably slipped under the radar a little bit, going that well 8th in the table, 14 points from 9 games so far. When you consider they've been battling against relegation for recent seasons, they've had a really good start to the season, so they'll be very confident. But the manner of their wins over Fulham and Sheffield United, I mentioned the one against Fulham could have and should have really been a draw in the end. And those are the 2 teams struggling towards the bottom of the table. So when coupled with Aston Villa's form, I've just gone for Villa winning this one 2-1. So differing on the final one, but very similar results in all of them, in most of them this week, Matt. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Thanks again for joining us. You can subscribe to this podcast on all the usual channels and on YouTube as well if you don't want to miss an episode. We'll have previews and features for all of these games and many, many more over on the site on sportsmole.co.uk. We will be back next week, myself and Matt, for the next round of predictions. So be sure to join back in for that. And we look forward to seeing you. Stay classy.